Welcome back, folks, to another New York Giants video here on Big Blue Avenue. I'm Tom Scavetta, joined alongside a very special guest today from Tampa Bay, Florida, Brian McArdle from the stands. Brian, how are you? Thanks a lot for hopping on.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, Tom. Thanks for having me on your show here.
Yeah, no problem. Now, obviously, I brought you on because today's video, folks, will be on Aaron Robinson, who played college at the University of Central Florida, the same school Brian attended. And Brian is a huge UCF fan, so we're going to talk about him. But before we get into Aaron Robinson, Brian, as I do know you do have somewhat of an inside scoop on this player, tell us about your podcast From the Stands and where people can find that.
Yeah, so anyone that's into college football as a whole, we do a game day show weekly during the season, including bowl games, all that good stuff. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, pretty much everything under From the Stands Sports. Same on YouTube. So if you search that, you'll probably be able to find us. And yeah, we're always. I know you've come on our show a few times. I'm sure you've had Andy on your show. He's been a frequent guest as well. So yeah, it's a good time. If you like college football, we're always open for more viewers. So come check us out.
Brian's awesome. He's an excellent college football analyst. I love being on your show. Folks, remember to give us a follow at Big Blue Avenue here on Instagram, Twitter, and our YouTube channel at Big Blue Avenue. This is a sub-show of Review and Preview Sports. So thank you all very much for watching. Now, Brian, the New York Giants have 8 players on their roster from colleges in the state of Florida, which I found as a little interesting fact, one of them being Aaron Robinson and, of course, Kadarius Toney, who was picked in the first round. But for your UCF Knights, a program record 5 athletes were selected in this year's draft. They had 4 drafted back in 2018. You had Richie Grant, Aaron Robinson, Jacob Harris, who I know you and I both talked about, were shocked that he went in the 4th round. Tay Gowan, who was a potential option for the Giants, and then Trey Nixon, a wide receiver who went to New England. But the focus today, Aaron Robinson, 3rd round pick. The Giants actually traded up from 76 to 71 with the Denver Broncos to get Aaron Robinson, a guy who was a senior, he's about 5'11 and a half, 6 feet tall, $185. He actually played at Alabama in 2017 before transferring to UCF, closer to home. He is from Deerfield Beach, Florida. 2-year starter, 104 tackles in just 30 games and 19 starts. Now, Brian, this guy was 2nd team all-conference for back-to-back years in 2019 and 2020. So I think this is a really good pickup for the New York Football Giants. He appeared in 9 of 10 games this year, has a good knack for causing turnovers. In fact, it was funny. PFF had him ranked as the 6th ranked corner in this draft. And the Philadelphia Eagles were mad that the Giants jumped in front of them to get Robinson. So apparently he was a highly coveted player. This is a 2nd round grade by almost any draft site. Why do you think Aaron Robinson fell to the 3rd round?
It's a weird situation. I mean, I did obviously the draft show. I came on for a little bit with you for Andy's show, and I think outside of the top 20-ish picks, things got very wild. I mean, I just in the tail end of the 1st round, I think the last 6 or 7 picks of that round, and then everything behind it, there was a ton of surprises, and some of them were shocking, to be honest. So I think it's just one of those situations where no one knew what was going on. It was a COVID season, obviously, so with conferences playing different amounts of games, you don't have enough footage on some guys opting out completely, like Joe Tryon, who the Bucs drafted. That was a shocker to me because, like I said, I didn't get to really see him play in his final year. So it's hard to go off of should we risk it on this type of guy? So for someone like Aaron Robinson, he's playing in the AAC. I know that they like to call it the Power 6 as a shot at the P5 because we don't get a lot of respect. And sometimes teams don't generally have a good read on these types of players. It's not like, someone like Patrick Surtain, see the cornerback out of Alabama. I think he was the first cornerback to go this year. He's playing at Alabama, best team in the nation, on average for the last decade, pretty much. So you know what you're getting. As far as Aaron Robinson's thoughts himself on dropping, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. It's not a big shot to his ego or anything. I think it's this type of thing is more of a problem to players who, I guess, typically get talked up as, he's first round pick, for sure going in the first round, and then they drop out of the first day completely. Because then they have to go to sleep knowing, I didn't get picked. Why didn't anyone pick me? Here it's a situation where, he was slotted to go maybe late second round, but the second and third rounds are held on the same day. So it's not like he was waiting around much longer, and was like an extra hour and a half of waiting. So I don't think it's that big of a difference. He loses a little bit of money, but as an ego thing, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I thought when the Giants picked him, I was a little surprised. I didn't think we were going to go corner at 71. I thought we were moving up to draft an offensive lineman. But the minute I heard it was Aaron Robinson, I really liked this pick because I remember you bringing him up a couple times last year on the college football show from the stands that you brought me on for a few weeks. And I think that overall, I really like this player. Also, UCF DBs have had a lot of NFL success as of late. You look at guys like Shaquille Griffin, Mike Hughes. Robinson did a lot of winning at UCF under head coaches Scott Frost and Josh Hoople. Played under DC Randy Shannon as well. And a lot of people are comparing this guy to Steve Nelson, who's current corner for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the NFL. This guy's very physical, who scouts are saying can play both on the inside in the slot or on the outside in the boundary. Do you think he's best suited to play on the inside, outside, or both? Do you think he's kind of a jack of all trades type of player who can pretty much line up wherever a team like the Giants would ask him to?
Yeah, I think personally, of course, I think he could do either. This is more of a situational thing for the Giants here. On how they want to move forward. I'm not, the biggest Giants fan here, so I don't get to watch a ton of footage on them. But from what I can see, or what I was, kind of hearing, Darnay Holmes, last year's pick, is kind of where he'll be fighting for. And I think just as an athlete, he's bigger, he's faster. Not by much, but all of those measurables, he kind of edges him out. So, if he comes in and the Giants immediately see it that he's better than Holmes in all those categories, he might just slot in above him there because it's an easier fix for the Giants. They can say, all right, he's going to outperform him here. Why not start him in this position? And then you've got Adoree Jackson, who, if you don't want to play him inside, you can, swap him out and alternate. But I don't think he would ever, at least not now, take over, the starting role from Jackson. So, in terms of his measurables, I think he's got good enough size to do either. But I think, he's got 4.38 speed. He ran a 4.38 in the 40. So I think, to start off, at least, I think we're going to see him play more than inside slot position there.
I agree with you, Brian. I think he's going to start off in the slot as the Giants are shifting to more of a press man type of defense, which suits his style. Very physical corner, as I just mentioned. He's a tough player. His tackling is outstanding. Hard tackler who hits more like a safety. I like the way he turns his hips and adjusts his body in coverage. And he had a great rep against our first-round draft pick, Kadarius Toney, in the Senior Bowl. So with toughness, tackling, and aggressiveness all being said, Brian, what is the biggest strength in his game?
It's probably got to be the speed, just because at that, people will argue, he's 5'11" and a half, or he's 6 feet. We'll just cut it in the middle and say almost 6 feet. .438 speed is pretty good there, and when you combine that with his, I don't want to call it like counter route running, but his ability to sort of predict how the route is going to turn out, which can at times get him in trouble. I know we'll talk about his weaknesses a little later here, I see, so I'll leave that for then. But the way that he runs with the route runners, with that speed and his intelligence, it's very difficult as a receiver to get away from him if you don't have that hyper elite speed or hyper elite route running. So we saw that a lot at UCF. It's very hard for guys to get away from him. So if they can hone in on that and just tweak him a little bit as a player there in the slot, I think there's going to be pretty good shutdown opportunity there. If they throw him in that nickel, I think zone or press man coverage. Like you said, the Giants seem to be moving towards that press man coverage, which I think he'll still define in. But I think either scenario, he'll be a strong player in.
Yeah, you mentioned the speed. I think the tackling too is a huge strength. In my opinion, it's one of his most noticeable improvements from his junior to his senior year. He only missed 2 tackles this season. What do you think went into that? Was there something in his game when watching him, Brian, that made you just think, he really improved like the technique in his tackling? Was it like open field adjustments that he made? What do you think went in to that drastic improvement?
Yeah, so part of the reason I didn't want to list tackling as one of his biggest strengths, I thought maybe I had a little bit of rose-colored glasses type thing going on since I'm a UCF fan. I personally do think his tackling is good, but throughout the draft and the notes from scouts, it seemed like a pretty mixed bag. I'll say. I didn't see it that much. He did miss a few tackles. That's going to happen, especially when you play for a team like UCF, whose offense plays so fast that the defense is out there for 75% of the game. You're going to get tired and you're going to miss a few tackles. But I think he is a good tackler, and I think the improvement was mainly just focused around getting those reps. Like you said, he was at Alabama before he came to UCF. Didn't get many reps there. Then he got injured, had a concussion on the very first kickoff of, I think it was 2017 or 18 season. Not specific, but it was one of those 2 years. So didn't get any. I think he played the last few games of that season, but not many reps that season. So he's only, his junior year was his first full season in college football. So I think it's more of just getting those reps in, getting that practice at full speed against guys that isn't a scrimmage situation. So, but yeah, I think he's a fine tackler. So I don't know. Maybe some scouts are seeing something different, but I think he is pretty good in that respect.
I do too. I think our general manager even brought it up how championship defenses have really good tacklers in the secondary, and I think he's an upgrade over who he currently had as our slot corner in that area. And I also think he could be a potential starter in about 2 years from now when Bradbury and Adoree Jackson are a little bit older, or if they don't want to re-sign them, if they want too much money. You have Aaron Robinson still on his rookie contract. However, you mentioned that tackling used to be not really a weakness, but something he could work on, something he could improve on. As he did miss a few tackles, as every player does. It's going to happen, regardless of how good you are at wrapping up a back or a receiver or a quarterback for that matter. Robinson takes a lot of chances. I noticed, he can be a real nice package player, but I caught some film on this guy. He does seem to have some busted coverages, Brian. Would you say that's his biggest weakness?
It's hard to say. I think in the NFL, it will be. The way that UCF played defense was a little bit risky, to put it simply. I think he was sort of given free range because of his speed. to play in that nickelback position. And if something got away from him, they trusted that, he would get there. Again, this isn't Alabama. He's not going up against LSU wide receivers like Terrace Marshall, where they need shutdown coverage every single play. Shannon and Heupel knew all along that these guys were going to be out there on the field on defense for 40 minutes a game. I think they sort of played the defense that way to mitigate some of those guys getting tired. So throw them in that nickelback zone, and if he's chasing a guy down, he's probably going to lose out in some open field situations. But the long game for UCF, it's very hard to say because the long game for UCF is very different than most college football teams. Baylor fans of 7 or 8 years ago can attest to that same sort of thing. And between Scott Frost's offense and Heupel's offense, everything just moves so fast that you're putting the defense basically at risk to make more mistakes because of their time on the field. So I'd probably say that's his biggest weakness, but he recovers nicely.
Yeah, and I'm just going to show a quick clip here on Robinson. You mentioned he does recover very nicely. He is really good at forcing incompletions too, Brian. He fits the bill for everything the Giants are looking for. 17 pass breakups over his final 2 seasons combined. Led the team with 7 of those this season. 10 passes defended and 3 picks last year as a junior in just 10 starts. Now, the Giants, as we mentioned earlier on in this show, are shifting to a more press man coverage type of defense. Last year, Darnay Holmes, our previous slot corner, who is probably still going to start, at least going into preseason, was more of a zone coverage corner. He had his lone interception of the season in zone coverage. How do you see Aaron Robinson, I guess I would ask you, fitting into this Giants defensive scheme, considering it's more into a press man?
Right, yeah. So, again, I think that's the big fight is going to be between those two, Holmes and Robinson. So, those type of things, it'll always be interesting. When you draft someone and then the very next year, draft a very similar player that, has very slightly better measurables on every single end there. If you're Holmes, you're in fight or flight mode at that exact moment, the second he got drafted. So as a Giants fan, I'm sure it'll be interesting for you to see, maybe it gets a little scrappy in training camp between those two. So we'll see how that plays out. But if they do focus on this press man coverage for the majority of how they want to shift this defense, I think Robinson will, I don't want to say in preseason, but I think by the end of the year, he'd be starting. He's just so quick, and I think his hands are a lot better. I didn't get to look up much of Darnay's his highlights here, but he seems, like you said, Robinson's movement, his hips he's a lot quicker, a lot more agile. Holmes seems like the opposite. So if they do want to start him off in that slot position, the obvious go-to, assuming he pans out well in training camp and he's progressing well, I think the obvious solution there is to switch him out with Holmes and see how that goes in the slot. So the other thing, some people seem to think that he would be able to alternate with Jackson. Obviously, that's playing him outside. I think he can play either pretty well, but to me personally, if you have the opportunity to better yourself 100% in one position, which would be switching him out with Darnay Holmes, I would do that and only use him as an alternate for Jackson, when Jackson is tired. I don't know. I'm not sure what wide receivers he covers specifically, Jackson. So, maybe you have more info on that for me, and I can maybe comment. But I think it's a much smarter move to switch him out with Holmes, assuming he, is the better player going forward.
Yeah, well, you pretty much hit on all the points I wanted to. the NFC East now has a really good wide receiving core. The Washington football team has Curtis Samuel. They have Terry McLaurin. The Philadelphia Eagles just drafted Devontae Smith, who I remember you predicted him as the Heisman winner before it happened, and you were 1,000% on the ball with that, as you usually are. And then the Dallas Cowboys also, they have CeeDee Lamb. They have Michael Gallup. They have Amari Cooper, of course, who we can't forget. So I think in what's really become more of a passing league now in the NFL, it's important to have these corners, fast corners that can keep up with these types of wide receivers. And I think our defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham, really did a good job last year. The Giants, although they were 6-10, they were a top 10 defense. And going more into cover one routes with this defense, I think having Robinson will only allow the Giants to help disguise more blitzes. I mean, we beat the Seattle Seahawks on the road last year. Nobody knew how we did it, but Patrick Graham did. I think having a guy like Robinson will be really fun to watch. It's a position battle that I think will come down to the wire in preseason. I do agree with your prediction that Robinson will be starting in the slot at some point this season. It's not the matter of if, it's the matter of when. And other corners on the back end of our roster are in trouble, folks. Isaac Yiadom, who had to fill in a lot last year, could be on the roster bubble. He's not a press man corner. He's more of a zone corner. And it's going to be interesting because Darnay Holmes is entering his second year. Adoree Jackson, we signed in free agency. Aaron Robinson, we drafted. So three of our top four corners, actually all four of our top corners, have only been with the team for 1 year or less. That includes James Bradbury, who was in his first year with the team last year. So, Brian, the youth in this secondary, Aaron Robinson's only going to add to that. So is there anything else you wanted to add on Aaron Robinson or your UCF Knights? Because I know he used to give guys like Jacob Harris fits in practice. I'm sure Harris and those UCF receivers will not miss going up against him every day.
Yeah, I mean, a guy like Harris, very quick, very big. So when you've got someone who's got that speed and can also play in the slot, that versatility is always very helpful. I think, as far as the way the draft played out, CB-wise, I think he was the perfect fit for them. I kind of looked over how picks were being made for the cornerbacks, and the only other solution I saw for the Giants would have been perhaps trading up into the second round. But in that scenario, I think you had Kelvin Joseph and Asante Samuel going in the first half of the second round. In that scenario, the Giants are then having to give up probably another pick, either a late 2021 or a future pick. And then also you lose out on Ojulari, who I thought was also a very great value pick at pick number 50. So to me, it wouldn't have made sense to do that, even if you really, really liked, Samuel or Joseph that much better. Robinson is very quick. He's very versatile. So I think the way that played out for them, getting Ojulari in the second and then Robinson there in the third, that was, a dream scenario, I guess, for them to be able to trade up, a few picks into that situation.
Absolutely. I mean, you remember on draft night, I was a huge advocate for Azeez Ojulari. Nobody knew he would dip to number 50, but the Giants were able to get him there, get Robinson at 71. 2 day 2 steals, in my opinion. The Giants had one of the top 5 day 2s easily. Now, Brian, I do have one more question for you. I predicted Azeez to the Giants, but you also predicted Kyle Trask to the Bucs, a little bit unrelated to Robinson. But what are you thinking, man? As a Tampa Bay Bucs fan, tell me what was your initial reaction? You're like, Trask to the Bucs. That's a steal.
Yeah, I mean, going into it, it just seemed like it was sort of meant to happen. You've got Brady, who very may well play into year 50. I mean, likely not, but who knows with that guy? He's here for another year. Maybe he adds another year after, depending on maybe they run it back to the Super Bowl. and he's still feeling fit, signed for another year. But to me, Trask, the way that Trask was sort of dogged into, or I guess dogged out of the first round talk,
Right.
with those other guys, Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, they were all kind of up here, and Trask in the talk was, in his own little world. And I think, as a UCF fan, you never want to give Florida credit. But I thought he had, one of the better seasons of a Florida quarterback probably ever. He's very football intelligent, and that's sort of the perfect stew brewing there, where he knows he's not getting a lot of respect, but he wants to learn. You could see that in his time at Florida. And who better to learn behind than Tom Brady? And I think, people were giving Jason Licht, our GM, credit for that pick. I think it was a total Arians move. People saying, "Oh, Arians, could be gone, so why does he care about Trask?" But Arians is, an offensive guy through and through. I think he saw the potential there, knew that if this kid sits behind Brady for 2 years, say the Bucs win a Super Bowl again this year, Arians retires or just walks off into the sunset with his 2 back-to-back Super Bowls. It's still a part of his legacy that he's got, potentially the Bucs' future quarterback for the next however many years once Tom retires. So to me, it just seemed like the obvious pick. Like I said earlier, the top, I think 1 through 20, those picks in the first round were, that was like the cream of the crop. Those are all the very elite players. After that, like I said, things kind of got all wacky. No one knew what was going to happen. So is it really a stretch to take a guy like Trask there? Is it a waste of a pick? I mean, maybe, but everyone that you would consider, elite is gone. So I think it's completely worth the risk. We returned every single starter on offense, every single starter on defense. First team, I think, in history to do that after a Super Bowl win. So, why not throw a dart at the wall, completely blindfolded with Trask, and maybe that's your future for the next 6 to 10 years once Brady's gone. So I loved it personally.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I believe we play in week 12, Giants Bucks. So, you'll get to see some of Aaron Robinson, maybe. You never know. We'll get to see Trask in there for a couple snaps. Who knows? It'll be very interesting to see, not to mention the center for Trask in college. The Giants have him as a UDFA, Brett Heggie, his center. So it'll be interesting to see if he makes the final roster, as the Giants elected to not go O-line in day 2 or day 3, filling up with BPA's best players available with guys like Aaron Robinson, Ellerson Smith, etc. But Brian, wanted to thank you personally for joining me here today on this show. Why don't you plug From the Stands one more time?
Yeah, so anyone's into college football, you can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all that jazz. Not on TikTok or anything like that, but you can look us up at From the Stands Sports. And yeah, it's always a pleasure to be on with you, Tom. Sharing the football knowledge, and yeah, I hope Robinson really pans out for you guys, because I liked him at UCF and I like him just all around as a player. So I'll be keeping an eye out.
He'll be fun to watch for sure. Brian, good luck to your Bucks as well, folks. Remember to follow us on Big Blue Avenue as well, in addition to From the Stands on Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well at Big Blue Avenue. If you like what you watch, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Really do appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody.